Hello, so it's really starting to get warmer now in the south of England, and already the mosquitoes and the ticks are definitely making their presence felt, and I'm seeing lots of them around now and picking ticks off the dog and that kind of thing. So I thought it was a good chance to go through ways you can avoid getting bitten, and that's what we're going to discuss in this video. Now I'm going to focus on things that bite you as opposed to things that sting you, because these are the little buggers that will go out of their way to get you, while most stinging insects tend to only do so in self-defense. Except for wasps, because they're just a-holes. And just for context, I am one of those unfortunate people who sometimes has very severe reactions to insect bites, to the point where sometimes my limbs swell up to twice the size they are normally, they turn black with necrosis, and it's even rendered me unable to walk for a week just with an insect bite. And that's really unfortunate for someone like me, who kind of likes to spend their time in the woods in the summer when I've got a day off work. But the following advice, it's really helped me, and hopefully it'll help you too. And the first thing is understanding when and where you're most likely to get bitten. And that is generally where there's moisture. For example, if you're around kind of standing water, like a pond or a lake, or even in a kind of a shaded woodland like this, where the ground tends to stay a little bit damp, or perhaps on a grassland where, underneath all the heather and the long grass, there's still a bit of moisture. That's the sort of places where you tend to get higher concentrations of those kind of flying, biting insects. And also they're much more active between dusk until dawn. I'm not sure why that is, but they are definitely more active there, and they're much more likely to bite you. So you need to pay particular precautions, around those times and places. And let's look at some of those precautions you can take. Bloody mozzie. One of the most effective things you can do to avoid getting bitten is to wear long trousers, a long sleeve shirt and a hat, because this acts as a barrier between you and the biting insect. And it's also very effective because it not only protects you from biting insects, it could protect you from stinging insects and some stinging plants as well, so things like nettles. Now it's important to understand that not all fabric and clothes are actually bite proof, and the general rule of thumb is if you can thread a hair through it, the chances are a mosquito can bite through it. And there's been quite a few times I've been bitten through my socks because that material just isn't tightly woven enough in order to offer protection. There's a couple of things you can do to make your clothing even more effective in preventing bites. One of them is by simply spraying it with insect repellent as you would your skin, and that will stop insects wanting to even land on it in the first place, so that's a great thing to do. The second thing you can do is use Pemethrin. Now Pemethrin is a chemical. It works a little bit differently to the insect repellent in that it doesn't disguise you. What it actually does is it's an insecticide, and it actually destroy and kill insects on contact. So as they land on your clothing that's been treated with Pemethrin, then they will actually be either incapacitated or will very quickly die. So it is a very effective way of giving you added protection. Pemethrin comes in two forms, either a long-lasting variety, which is applied at the factory when the garments are being made, which can last up to about 70 washes, so it's really durable. Or you can get a spray, so you can do it yourself at home, and that tends to last either about 6 weeks or 6 washes, whatever comes first. Now in the British Army, the combat uniforms are treated with Pemethrin at the factory, so they're good for about 70 washes, but you can also buy it on the civilian market as well. The outfit I'm wearing today is from Craghoppers, and it's part of their Nosilife range. And just for the record, I'm not sponsored by Craghoppers, and they haven't sent me any products to try. Although Craghoppers, if you're watching, this is just something I've bought myself. I've been using Nosilife for years, and it's a product I really like. I've probably got about 4 shirts and a similar number of trousers. And despite today that I look like I've had style advice from Kim Jong-un by using all one colour, this is actually a really effective outfit. And the material is very tightly woven, so it does actually prevent mosquito bites that way. It's loose fitting, and it has been impregnated with Pemethrin as well. So anything that lands on me will just drop off and die, and it gives me lots of protection when I'm out and about in the woods. And if you don't want to go down the whole route of buying mosquito-proof clothing designed at the factory, you can just treat whatever you've got with Pemethrin and see how it works for you. One of the precautions you can take is to use an insect repellent like Deet, which is probably the most well-known one. And Deet was actually invented by the US Army, and then it was made public for everybody else. Now Deet is considered very effective, and it's good against things like mosquitoes, it's good against ticks, and most kind of flying, biting insects. So it is a really good product, but it does have a couple of drawbacks. One of them is the smell, because it doesn't smell particularly nice, and a lot of people don't like it. And the second reason is it tends to be quite greasy on. Now the British Army use this one, which is called Ultrathon, which gives you 12 hours protection, and this stuff is really good. I can vouch for this. I've used this many times and it is a very good product, but it does feel absolutely horrible when it's on, because it just tends to cling to you. The fact that it stays on means it works, but it doesn't feel very, very nice. Now, personally, I prefer Deet in a spray form because that tends to be a lot lighter and it just tends to feel a lot easier on. So if you're getting Deet, maybe have a look at sprays rather than the cream, unless you really do need the kind of clinging power of something like this one. If you don't like Deet, there is another really good insect repellent called Picaridin, and Picaridin is just as effective as Deet, but it doesn't have the same side effects of being smelly or of having that kind of greasy feel, so it's much easier to wear. Now personally, I like this one from Track. I think this is quite effective, but there are other brands out there, and Picaridin is generally my preferred choice when it comes to insect repellents. When you're putting any insect repellent on, it's important to cover all exposed areas of skin, but be careful around your eyes, your nose and your mouth, because it tends to sting if it gets in those. It does say all mucous membranes, so I guess if you're going naked you need to be careful of other areas too, but just be very careful, particularly around your eyes and your mouth. Now what I find as well is when I'm applying it to my face, it's much better to spray it onto my hands and then use my hands to apply it to my face, just to avoid getting it into my eyes if it's a spray form, for example. And what I tend to do is I tend to spray the back of my hands and then use the back of my hands to apply it to my face. You can put it on your palms, but what I find is if you touch your eyes afterwards, then that will sting. And also if you've eaten a sandwich or eaten some food, it tends to not taste very nice. So I try and keep it off my palms and just use the back of my hands instead. And the final precaution we should take is to use a mosquito net at night. And when you think about it, because mosquitoes are most active between dusk until dawn, it actually makes a lot of sense to use a net then. Now, the best thing about mosquito net is it does actually give you a bit of a safe haven. So if you're going to do your personal admin, where you give yourself a bit of a wash down, or you want to get changed, for example, it gives you a safe space where you can take your time and do that without having to kind of get through it as quickly as you can, worried that all these mosquitoes are going to kind of rush in and bite you to death.